Right on time, huh?
Okay, let's call call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of City of Beaumont for Tuesday, May 3rd. And we'll start the meeting at 6:01. And can we begin with a roll call, please?
Councilmember Lara,
Here.
Councilmember Santos,
Here.
Councilmember Fenn,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez,
Here.
Mayor White.
Here. And we can, with Mr. Lara, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes. Please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. And begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so we'll start with the recycled water update. Let me back up. No adjustments to the agenda, correct? Okay, so we'll go ahead and start with the recycled water update, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We have Brian Webb here with Albert A. Webb and Associates. He is your consultant. He is the Chief Operations Officer with Webb. He's been with Webb for 21 years. He was retained actually by me 7 years ago, 2015, and he is the principal engineer over the Beaumont Salt Mitigation Project's feasibility study and final design of your wastewater treatment plant upgrade and brine line. Thank you.
Good evening.
Council, good to see you. There we go. Okay. Good to see you tonight. I have a hopefully somewhat brief presentation as an update to your salt mitigation recycled water project. So I'm going to go through it. If you have questions, feel free to stop me. If you have questions at the end, I'm happy to take those then as well. So just want to give an update, a status report. So in front of you have a picture. This is where we started back when construction started back in 2018. This was your old existing plant, working through the beginnings of the upgrade and expansion of that plant. This is a much more recent picture taken a few months ago of what that plant has been transformed into. It's been upgraded to 6 million gallons a day from what was previously a 4 million gallon a day plant. Membrane bioreactor facility with partial RO treatment for salt reduction. So that's where it is today. It is in operation. Just a few more pictures of kind of what it looks like. This is the new aeration basin and the treatment building behind it. This is the inside of that building. This is the RO facility, and then the membrane bioreactor off a little bit further to the right. This is what's inside of that building. This is really the heart of your treatment facility. This is all in place and like I said, operational. Construction update. There are some things still outstanding that need to be completed. We're working with the contractor and your operations group, some sludge piping that needed to be replaced. We tried to reuse some existing old piping, and some of that needs to be replaced. We're working through some issues with ground cover and erosion control on site. We have some minor road modifications that still need to be completed to allow the sludge trucks to move around a little more freely throughout the plant. Working out some fine-tuning, some bugs on the centrifuge system. And then on the brine line, when we were in operation previously with the RO system down near Redlands Boulevard, there's some siphons where the pipeline dips under different obstructions, channels and different things. It dips down. And there's a spot down there where we need to install some vents for air locking. Just a capacity issue. So we're working through that with the contractor to get those installed as well. So just some minor miscellaneous items that are still underway. Project schedule, well, I'll back up because I didn't have it on there. So as you're aware, membrane replacement is ongoing at the plant. That's underway. That is scheduled to be done right near October of this year. So that's happening. We've been in meetings with the regional board regarding permitting. They have delivered to the city a draft discharge permit and master recycling permit. So we're working with your staff to help review that, get comments back to the regional board. The regional board's intent is to issue, or to take that to their board meeting in June and to then finalize your new permit, which will include all of your new discharge requirements and include all the master recycling provisions in it as well. So that's scheduled for June of this year, just here in a couple months. And then we've been in contact with the Department of Drinking Water regarding your recycled water permit for producing recycled water. That work was just about done previously, and then the city decided to replace the UV system. So there was some additional work that needed to be done there. There was a UV validation study that was done, and it's been completed and accepted by Department of Drinking Water. Once the construction is finished, the Department of Drinking Water will come out and do their final inspection of your facility. They'll check all the alarms and make sure everything is working the way that it's supposed to, making sure that things shut off if water goes out of spec or anything like that. So they'll come through and check all the safeties to make sure that that's all happening the way that it should. And then after that, they will issue the city a permit to produce recycled water. So we would anticipate somewhere near the end of the year, once construction gets done, hopefully in October, then they'll come out and do their final inspection, and then we'll get permits soon thereafter. And so we're anticipating somewhere near the end of the year that permit would be coming. So just a few more details about permitting. As I said, the waste discharge requirements and master recycling permit from the regional board. We're reviewing the draft again for June of 2022, going to their board meeting for adoption. Just a few things I want to make sure everybody, council, that you're aware of. So the regional board has been very good about working with the city, understanding where you're at with construction and some of the current issues with the RO system being turned off for a little while the membranes are being replaced. So what they've done is in your draft permit, they've given you an interim TDS limit, so that from June, when your new permit is issued, until we're anticipating closer to the end of the year when the RO system comes online, they're going to give you an interim TDS limit so that you wouldn't be in violation of the basin plan objectives. And so they've written that into your permit, which is a good thing. And like I said, they've been very helpful in accommodating and understanding on, with the progress that the city's made. Having been involved with the regional board since 2015 with you all, you have made incredible strides in progress with the regional board. The first meeting that I went to with the regional board, they were not happy at all with the progress that the city of Beaumont had made. And now they're to the point of being very accommodating, very helpful, and providing good suggestions about things like this, about having an interim TDS limit just to make sure that the city doesn't have compliance issues until the RO system is brought online. So very good strides have been made there. Tds Compliance, this is another one that we've been working with the regional board on. The original compliance timeline for makeup of the TDS, the excess salts that are being put into the basin during this time of building the treatment plant and getting it up and running. So the original permit was issued in 2015, and it had a 10-year compliance window. So you were supposed to have made up any excess salt in the basin by 2025. They've written into your draft permit an extra 2 years to allow a little bit of time to be able to get caught up on that. And so the way it's written in the draft is January of 2027. So almost a 2-year extension of doing that makeup of the excess salt and nitrogen loading in the basin. So those are good things that are in that draft permit. What that will take, though, once the RO comes online, we're assuming sometime around September that the RO system will come back online. It will require the city to run it. You have 5 RO trains. The anticipated the expected operation is to run 4 and have 1 as a standby backup. Your staff will need to accelerate that a little bit and try to run as much as they can, 5 units, just to accelerate the catch-up period. But it can run that way. It's just gonna push the system a little bit harder and try to be a little bit more aggressive on that catch-up. And so we've talked to the regional board about that. They're okay with it. And we've talked to your operations staff. We think that that's a reasonable way to run the system for a short period of time to be able to catch up. But what it also does do, there's another limitation in that your capacity that you purchased at Orange County Sanitation District for treatment of that brine and the purchase of brine line capacity in Inland Empire Brine Line kind of matches with running 5 RO skids. So you'll be pushing about pretty close to your ownership limits, which is okay. You're well within your right to do that. But just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, and that was one of the discussions we had with the regional board, because they asked your staff, well, what could you do more to try to get done faster with that catch-up period? We said, well, we could add more RO, but the city doesn't own more capacity in the brine line and at the treatment plant in Orange County. And then when they heard that, I think that's where the regional board kind of said, well, okay, then let's just give you a couple more years to comply. And so I think they were pretty reasonable about understanding that. But just wanted to make sure everybody understood that those were some limitations in there. The nitrogen, which is the TIN, total inorganic nitrogen makeup compliance, again, was extended to January of 27. But your system is actually doing fine with that, and you'll have caught up on the nitrogen loading in the basin before 27. So that part's okay. Wanted to also point out, though, that groundwater recharge using either recycled water or fully advanced treated water is not allowed by the draft permit. What your draft permit says is that if you want to go to groundwater recharge, you have to just come back to the regional board, and it's what they call a reopener of your permit. So then they would reopen your permit and give all of whatever the requirements are for groundwater recharge. So that's something that's a specific reopener in what will be your draft permit or what your final permit. It's the same language that was in your previous permit. Your permit now says the same thing, that you're going to be approved to do recycled water for irrigation, but if you want to do recharge, that's a specific reopener of the permit. They're not saying you can't do it, they're just saying that you have to come back and it's a whole nother set of requirements and that goes into it, so. Okay.
Mr. Knoll,
Yeah.
before you go on to the next slide, 2 quick questions.
Yes.
Our interim TDS limit, what is that? Do you know what that number is?
I think they're going to put it at, I think it's 400 or 450.
And then what is the limit that will be back in place as of?
So the basin plan objective is if you're using it for recycled water, it's 330. And if you're discharging to the creek, it's 300.
Okay.
You can discharge the first 1.8 million gallons of water from your treatment plant at 400. And then after the first 1.8 million that goes to the creek, if you deliver more to the creek, then it drops down. But they are giving you an interim. I think it's either 400 or 450. I'm going to look in my notes and see if I can find
And then
it.
do you know what the permanent numbers will be?
Yeah, the basin plan is the 330 if it's
330.
recycled, or 300 if it's being discharged.
Got it.
After the initial 1.8 million that gets discharged. So that just goes back to the basin plan, which is the same. It's not changing based on the new permit.
Okay.
Okay.
You can move on.
Okay, thank you. So just a little bit more about permitting. So like I said, the validation study on the new UV system was completed in October of 21. That was all fully tested by a third-party independent validator. Came out, they did tracer studies through the new UV system, and that all got approved by the Department of Drinking Water. Again, we have to do final inspection by the Department of Drinking Water after construction is completed, and then they will issue you a permit we're guessing somewhere, like I said, in maybe December of '22. I don't know what their permit backlog is and kind of what their time frame is, but we're just sort of guessing somewhere near the end of the year. That will give you your permission, your permit to produce recycled water. There's another flip side to this, which is the permit to distribute the recycled water. Note that the city is not the authorized purveyor of recycled water. I think you all are aware of that. Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District is the approved purveyor of recycled water in Beaumont. We've had some discussions. I'm not fully aware. They're here, so I think they can speak to this certainly better than I can about where they stand in the permitting process. I know that there's a lot of sites that they need to get individually tested and permitted. Not aware exactly of where they are in that process. We understood when we met with the Department of Drinking Water that the process once started is probably 18 months to 24 months. It was what the Department of Drinking Water thought it would take once that process started to be able to permit the system to be able to distribute recycled water. So certainly, I guess somebody else could speak to that a little bit better than I can. That's just my understanding from my discussions with the Department of Drinking Water. And just a little bit on the Max Benefit Program. So the agreement that the city, along with other stakeholders, made in the Max Benefit Program was to reduce the salts, the TDS, going into the groundwater, also to reduce the nitrogen loading that was going into the groundwater through the city's wastewater plant effluent, and then to remove any excess buildup of salts and nitrogen since the permit was issued in 2015. And so the city has been, your staff has been tracking that. They take a monthly TDS sample, and then they take that and extrapolate that over all of the flow that you discharge each month. And there's an accounting that's being done, and it's basically like a salt bank account, if you will. And so that's a known number between the city and the regional board. And then once the desalter comes online, then you'll start pulling that, that salt accumulation down. And then that's where that timeline for 2027 comes into, to make sure that you've fully accounted for all of that salt reduction by the 2027. And then the last part of the basin plan and max benefit program that the city's on the hook for is to produce and distribute recycled water over the groundwater basins. And that, I will point out, is specifically laid out in your permit, that it says that the city is to distribute recycled water over the basin. I will point out that it doesn't say how much water you have to distribute. There's not a specific quantity. It doesn't say you shall deliver, more than X over the basin. But it does say that you have to produce and distribute recycled water over the basin. When we met with the regional board, we pointed out I don't want to say it's a contradiction, but the challenge in that the city is not the authorized purveyor of distributing recycled water. And they said, too bad. That's for you guys in the water district to work out how that happens, but it's in your permit as a requirement. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. And then from a basin plan or max benefit program, it does say that Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District will distribute recycled water over the basin, over the groundwater basin. But again, it doesn't say, to my knowledge, have any specific quantity of how much water that has to be. It just says that you have to do it. So, you have a question?
Not yet. Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think, now's the time.
Okay, so let's start with, see if there's any public comments. That way maybe you can address any public comments.
I'm guessing there are.
And then we'll open questions up to council after that.
First speaker is Ron Duncan.
Good evening. It's good to meet with you. It's actually nice to meet in person, and our board is still meeting Zoom. working on retrofitting our boardroom to be able to do both, which will be really nice when that's done. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on us. Our board is dedicated to continually improving the area, the region, to bring in more water. We have a lot of projects in the works right now. Obviously, you're familiar with some of them, the Sites Reservoir, Delta Conveyance. We have purchased new property close to our recharge facility to do some improvements there, and then new property in Calamasa to do the same. Backbone pipeline going from Banning to Cabazon, and also a 20-year contract with Ventura for 10,000 acre feet has been secured. We as a board are dedicated to continually seeing the region grow. There's obviously 6 of us here tonight. Mr. Eckhart was unable to be here and sent out a message to each one of us, and I'm going to read, if you don't mind, read what he sent. He said, "If you attend the meeting and are called upon to, and feel compelled to speak, here is my take, my words. I hope you will find it helpful." He said, "Local water is the best water, even speaking as an importer." He said, "We recognize that recycled water is 100% reliable because it is already here. We just need to treat it and reuse it. Any local water we can utilize here means less pressure on the pass to import water and make supplies more sustainable and resilient to drought. Recycled water," whoops. Somehow I went to my calendar. Sorry. There we go. Let's see. Recycled water is reliable because it's already treated. We hope you just need to treat it and reuse it. Any local water we can utilize means less pressure on the pass water to import water and make supplies more sustainable and resilient to drought. Recycled water is an important part of the regional water portfolio that we would like to see developed. If we can help in planning shared facilities or ways to stretch our water supply and public dollars by collaborating, we would love to get a conversation started. Okay.
Mr. Duncan, just for the record, who was that?
Lance Eckhart, that's our general manager.
Lance Eckhart, okay. Thank you.
As you probably know, over the years, we started out with drawing a blank. Jeff Davis is our general manager. He brought us to one level, and now we have Lance Eckhart, who is actually taking us to another level of growth within this. He's made some incredible strides on top of what Jeff Davis started, and we've seen a lot of improvements. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to take a few minutes and update. I know that there are other board members that are going to speak too, so hopefully we cover everything that you need to know from us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan.
Next speaker is Dan Jaggers.
Good evening, Council. It's good to be here again. I was here a few months ago talking about recycled water. I'm really happy with the presentation tonight. I had a feeling where we were going to be is where we're at tonight. Our district stands to partner with the City of Beaumont. We've worked for 30 years or 29 years since CFD 93-1 got implemented, and considered this as sort of a partnership and activity that's gone back and forth. When it comes to recycled water reuse, I think it's a couple of important things. We have a non-potable system. There's a lot of work to do to make sure that that's viable for the distribution of recycled water. There's a pump station to be built. So when you start talking about that 18 to 24 months in permitting, the reality is without special facilities like temporary pump stations, it's that far out anyway. We had a 2x2 committee that we met with in 2018 and so, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the city. And we have a lot of expenditures to make. I expect those expenditures in today's dollars might approach $4 or $5 million. One of the things I communicated, so $500,000 to $1 million to implement by the time you get everything tested and do all that labor and work with consultants and staff. And then a $3 to $4 million booster station to build on top of it, and things to work out for those facilities to be located. Potentially, it's plumbed to go on to a city site. We talked about that a few years ago. Then we kind of sort of stalled out as the city reconsidered the strategy. I think a few months ago, we talked about fully advanced treated, and it looked like it was heading towards a proposal from the previous management as recharge, most likely. That has some issues now with the new chromium-6 laws and the way the sort of non-chromium-6 portions of our basin are with where our extraction wells are for adverse impact. I think I said that at the last meeting. Regardless, 3 of our board members are here in the audience. I'm not sure, but I think 1 or 2 more might be attending or watching. We're very interested in this. We want to work with you. We have a lot of work to do. I provided a schedule in 2017 and 18 when we first started talking about this, identifying sort of our activities and the work required. And there's a year and a half's worth of work minimum to 2 years. So we're right in line with that sort of activity. And then the Division of Drinking Water we've talked to, and they don't have the staff to look at 330 sites, which is what we have. And so some of those delays are how you get implemented. And we're going to need some consideration from them. We'll probably have to work together to get that consideration, because typically they want you to test it all within 6 months of implementation, so you know everything's good. And we're probably going to have to revisit that, get through the process and then revisit it. So lots to do and a lot to work forward to. We're looking forward to working with your interim city manager over the course of the next few months to find a solution. Sorry, I ran out of time. Hopefully, I'll wrap it up.
No, you can go a little longer if you'd like.
Okay, so I think the important thing is that we reinstitute, once you're comfortable with sort of an approach, the 2x2 committees, because what we need to do is where we were lacking is a purchase agreement to secure sort of the relationship with the city and Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. And our board, of course, is reticent of spending ratepayers' funds as well as facility fee deposits on facilities that may become a stranded asset if we can't deliver sort of the combined project between the city and the water district. So all those things being considered, I think we have a lot to do. I unfortunately loaded onto your interim city manager a email series and then a book of the things I had sent to the city last week, sort of our sort of planning level activities and the transparency from our district. And those were provided to your city manager, previous city manager last year, and Todd Groundwater. So we've tried to work with staff as much as possible to let them know where we're at and what we need to do to complete. So that being said, I could talk all night on this subject. It's important. We're in a drought. Our district declared an emergency last Thursday, and we will be communicating to you this week, as well as all the local area ratepayers and participants in our groundwater supply, that we're restricting water, irrigation water use to 3 days a week, I think is the way it went down, and that California's in a serious drought. And these kind of things help us drought-proof, right? Because it's water that's there to be used. And
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Jagger.
Yeah, a lot of work to do still, but we're here to work with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Chandler Little.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just would like to say that
Mr. Lutul, hold on for 1 second. For the rest of you, that if you come up and you're on one of the boards, let us know which board you're on, just so everyone paying attention can understand that. So,
absolutely, thank you.
thank you.
So Chandler Little with the San Gorgonio Pass Water Agency
Okay.
on the board. And I just want to say that the tone in the room feels a little flat, and I'm surprised because it's almost as if we just heard bad news, but we didn't. This was great news. It just, really seems like this council and previous leadership has really ran a marathon, and you're in the last mile. And so I just want to encourage you that you're doing good things, and bringing recycled water to our community is important, especially as we stand here in a drought right now. And many communities are, going down to 1 day a week of watering And so it's just, recycled water is sustainable and it's drought proof. And so it really puts us in a good position as a community. So thank you for the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Mickey Valdivia.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. Mickey Valdivia. I am the Vice President, of the San Gregorio Pass Water Agency. Behind me also from the agency is Director Ibarra and Director Walton, and I believe Director Ball is probably going to speak. I saw him with the speaker slip as well. So there's 6 of the 7 of us. President sends his regrets. He couldn't be here. But anyways, I from a historical perspective, I've been doing politics around here for a long time, and I'll tell you, what's very refreshing to me is to know that Beaumont Cherry Valley Water, the city, and the Pass Water Agency, we do have the ability to sit down at the same table and resolve, some of these issues that we have. Our goal is to import and artificially recharge state project water, but we also know that the other 29 purveyors are also diversifying their portfolio. So to listen to the presentation from Webb and to know that there's probably still a little bit more work that needs to go on for the permitting stuff is something that we want to partner with you on and maybe even be a customer of yours someday. So we want to be invited to the table as well. That's my message. I hate redundancy. So if you want to expand the 2x2 to 2x3, I don't know what you'd call it, but we want to be at the table. We really do. We want to partner with you. And we clearly understand that our largest customer is the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. And though we respect all of our retailers, what they say, what they do, what you guys do, we follow very, very closely. So we have momentum, right? We can all be in the same room together. And while we have that, I think it's our obligation as stakeholders to further our agendas for each other and collaboratively. So please invite us. We'd love to be at the table with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last speaker I have is Nancy Hall.
Good evening. That was a really nice presentation on the water. I appreciated seeing that we're actually doing something about recycled water. But I just wanted to bring up just a couple of things. Back 2008, some of you might remember around that time, a Measure B tried to go through on, it was a protest against the Wildermuth report. And I was appointed by the Board of Supervisors and sat on that committee along with Brian DeForge. And what we discovered from it, it wasn't an honest report. And we went back to the Board of Supervisors and we asked for a third-party study. And so UCR did the third-party study and decided that it was 50 to 100 years before they had to be concerned about the septic tanks in Cherry Valley. And I bring this up because, even though it's Cherry Valley, I know that those recharge ponds sit up there in Cherry Valley. And I don't know if they're affected by the septic tanks or not, but I think you just need to be mindful about that situation because it goes fast in time, and 50 years, is kind of beyond all of us right now, but like for future generations, I think it needs to be thought about and in the plan what's going to be done about those septic tanks. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hall.
I have one more.
Okay.
Blair Ball.
Hang on one second.
Thank you. Blair Ball speaking as a citizen, ratepayer, long-term member of the community, and director of San Gregorio Pass Water Agency. I hadn't planned on speaking, but thank you, Vice President Valdivia, for inviting me up here. I appreciate it. I've been at this water events for longer than I care to remember. In the early years, where at least 12 years ago in our urban water management plan with the Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District, we said we would have recycled water going in 2011, 2012. That's 10 years ago. and things needed to change. And what I wish to convey to you is my gratitude for you who serve and for other members on elected boards. Things had to change. We had to change things at staff level and personalities and so forth. And I think now is the right time, because I think the personalities that are in this room have the capacity to make great things happen in the recycled water arena. And so I won't bore you with the historical aspects of things, but this is a great moment in our history. And as long as cool heads prevail and common sense prevails, and with the thought that it's for the citizens and not for our own aggrandizement, so forth, people will never remember who we are, just what we did. So thank you, council, for being here and serving. Thank you, staff.
Thank you, Dr. Ball.
I'd like to check the phone lines really quick.
Okay.
Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
No callers.
Okay. All right, Mr. Knowles. So let's start. Go ahead, Mr. Finn.
First off, I want to thank everybody for being here. It's good to hear the news firsthand, so I'm glad you were able to do that. Mr. Knowles, a question for you when it comes to cooperation with the other agencies. So we need pipes and pumps from Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District. Do we need to blend the water for direct groundwater recharge? Is that going to be a requirement for us?
I would anticipate that there would likely be some portion of blending. It depends on proximity of wells to the recharge, where it happens, and that's all the reasons why the reopener is in your draft permit, is that if you're going to do recycled water or use the water for recharge, you need to figure out all of those things. So but there would likely be, in most instances, some sort of dilution water that goes along with that groundwater recharge.
Okay, all right. And then, so we'll find out later in terms of how much of a blend, like 3-to-1 or something like that?
Yeah, it would, and I think, again, it gets back to proximity of groundwater wells to where that recharge happens and subsurface travel time. There's a whole complicated study that has to go along with that to figure out what those are. Normally, what I've seen in the past is that it doesn't require you to blend it instantaneously and then put it in, that there's some, time where over a given amount of time, years, right, you have to have a certain blend ratio. So you can put recycled water when it's available, import water or storm water or some other water source, and that you can blend that over a long period of time. It doesn't have to necessarily be instantaneous blending and then put in. Is that?
I appreciate you mentioning that. It's the first time I've heard that explained that way, so that's
Yeah.
very helpful to know.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm good.
Mr. Martinez.
Thank you. Mr. Newell, just a couple of quick questions and then one longer question. So for the Brine Line vents, the new permitting doesn't change the timeline or affect anything else with everything on schedule for the?
No, we just need to get that done. It's just been on the list of things to do. It just needs to get done.
And for the reopening for the permit, does that change any of the conditions that the permit has now currently? Or is that just a separate process?
No, it's just there's certain triggering events that cause a reopening of the permit. And what they told us, it would probably be an amendment to your existing permit, so they wouldn't redo the entire thing. But they just, for certain triggering events, they put those in there so that they know that this is a possibility, that the city may come back and say, hey, we'd really like to do groundwater recharge. And so they write it in there as a specific event that then triggers a reopening. And so everybody kind of knows, right? There's no secret that in order for you to do that, you just have to come back and get all of the requirements.
So it
from
won't
them.
necessarily affect the extensions and stuff that they already have?
No, it won't affect what we're doing right now and the permit that they're working on right now, no.
And then the last question has to do with the RW or the fat water. So the last time that the council had a presentation, I didn't see you or your input in that. So I'm concerned because we made a decision or a direction that we thought was good at the time for that proposal. And now I would like to know, is there anything you want to chime in on that? Or is that something for another time, or do we need to agendize that and talk more about that, because, you know, that was something that we had decided based on the information we got at the time. Okay, and we went for whatever option that was, and yeah, fat was better, lowered our liability, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, well, we didn't really hear from the consultant, and we made that decision. And now my question is, do you think it'd be better for us to revisit that so that you can make input on that?
Not having been privy to the presentation, all the information, so I'm a little bit of a disadvantage to what all took place and you were presented.
That's exactly why I'm
I will
asking.
just offer this opinion, that I think the opportunity for the city and the water district and the pass agency to all get together and decide what ultimately is the best use and opportunity for this water would be a great opportunity. Because it's a complicated system in that you have 2 or 3 governing bodies that oversee much of the same consumer base, right? And the impacts of the city putting water into the ground has impacts on potentially groundwater well supply. And they can't be done in a vacuum. They need to be done together and figured out, because if you all decide that doing groundwater recharge is what you think is the best for the sewer system, it needs to be also judged against what's best for the water system, because you're serving the same constituents, right?
And
Your
that's-
same customers.
And that's why I was asking about your expertise. So before we go further with something we decided on, I didn't know if it would be to our benefit, to everyone's benefit, if we went back to revisit that, to look at that again. So that's just something that I guess we'll have to discuss and see with the city manager and so forth as we go forward, and when we get the 2x2 going.
And Mr. Martinez, in addition to that, it's not just the well water, right? The potential groundwater wells that could be impacted. But the pass agency is the most likely source of dilution water, right? So there's a partnership there as well for however this all comes together. So that's why I think it's in the best interest of everybody to have all those parties together and make sure that those things are all interacting in the most beneficial way.
Okay, that'll go for now.
That's my opinion.
For now, that'll do. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Santos?
Sure. Thank you. That was a good presentation in there, Brian. And my main concern is the RO on this. I mean, I know you're saying that, you know, what will happen now from June to September to do the, you know, the full blast in there. I'm concerned of the 5 to maximize that. Do we have any plan? The last time I made a, you know, a tour on that plant, and we were planning about getting to up to 8 RO in there. I don't know if you, you know, see that plan in there or not, but I'll stick on this up to 6 RO in there. And I know we're in operation about 4 to 5 right now. And what's your professional opinion of maximizing it up to 2027 on this? I'm kind of concerned about that.
Well, just for clarity's sake, you have 5 RO units now. There is a space that was left open for a 6th one, so you could implement that so that then you have, if you had to run 5, you could have still a spare. So that could be done, I will say, fairly easily, right? It's some money, right, that needs to go into it, and you have to order it and put it in, but the infrastructure is basically there at the plant to be able to do that. The challenge with that is, if you don't go in the future to fully advanced treated, you will have excess capacity. Once you've made up the ground that, you know, the accumulation that you have now, once you've made that up after 2027, you'll have excess, you would have excess RO capacity that would just be sitting there idle. So when we explained that to the regional board, as I said, they were comfortable then giving you a little bit more time rather than forcing you to make expenditures that potentially could be somewhat of a stranded asset in the future. And so it really depends on what your ultimate treatment destination is. If you're gonna end up at fully advanced treated, then just the 6 units wouldn't be enough. So there would have to be even more than that, either stacking them vertically or some other kind of an expansion of the RO system. that wasn't originally contemplated in the original design. So there's ways to make it more robust, in the future. But I think largely it's dependent on what the ultimate treatment scenario is. If you get to fully advanced treated, then you'd need to go more RO. If you're really just trying to knock it down and use it for irrigation, as the original plan was, then what you have, I think, is okay. It'll have to run a little bit more aggressively for a few years, but then it'll be sized appropriately for going into the future. So I think it just depends on where your ultimate destination is, Mr. Santos.
Very good. Thank you about that, because, I'm expecting the growth here in the city. I mean, what will happen now up to 2025 and 2027 on that. That's the reason I like to hear from you on that.
Yeah, so based on the original anticipation that the water was going to be used for recycled irrigation, that's why there's an extra spot for a sixth unit, because when the plant gets expanded to 8 or 8.5 MGD in the future, you would add that sixth one, but you would still have enough capacity to lower the TDS to meet the basin plan objectives when it's with regards to irrigation water. Now, if you wanted to go to fully advanced treated and all of the flow would have to be treated through the RO system, then that plan needs to be modified and you would need additional RO beyond that. So, but for the plan you're on right now and where the permitting is headed, your system's fine.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Mr. Lara.
Sure, thank you, Mayor. It's great to see everyone here and feel the support that we have. Who would have thought we'd have this kind of an issue to worry about 7 years ago, which is a good problem to have. Brian, to do both recycle and recharge, we'd have to do to do recharge, let me just focus on that, we'd have to do additional things to the plant, additional modifications, additional purification, as I understand it?
Possibly. It depends on proximity of the groundwater wells in relation to where the recharge happens. So there's rules about subsurface flow and time. So once the water gets infiltrated and put into the groundwater, you would have to do tracer studies to figure out where's the nearest extraction point. And depending on the time it takes to get from the infiltration to the extraction point depends on the level of treatment. The closer the extraction point is to where the water goes in, to where it's infiltrated, then the more treatment you need. So depending on that proximity will depend on how much additional treatment you have to do.
Okay.
So if you put the water in the ground and the travel time is a year before it gets to the nearest extraction point, then the water that you're producing now is likely fine for that. If it's a month or 2 months subsurface travel time, what you have is not fine. So that's where I'm saying there's a bigger discussion to be had, because if you're negatively impacting water supply, right, it's like I said, it's the same customers. And so, right, you got to balance that, even though there's two entities that are overseeing it, each part of that.
So, which was not mentioned in the report that we initially got a few months ago, so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because the concern that I had was the amount of money it was going to cost us to additionally treat the water. So obviously, as you indicated earlier, this is a larger concern than just City of Beaumont, obviously, and then we have the support in the room to go ahead and sit down and start looking at the other options, because it sounds like there's a study that needs to be done before we even determine what the treatment issues are going to be or the treatment requirements are going to be. So
I believe that's true.
okay. I guess probably the biggest concern I have is that we're on the hook to distribute the water, only we don't have any control over that distribution, at least as far as that I can see. So obviously, getting together sooner rather than later is going to be a critical issue, or a critical point that we need to do. But are there ways that recycled water or things that the city can do to hang on to recycled water? Because one thing I really don't want to do is to waste any of this water at this point. We're in essence, I think, doing some of that now. and I don't want to do any more. So I want to make sure that the ratepayers are the beneficiaries of this water. And so are there things that we can do to help, I guess, offset that?
I think there's probably, and I don't want to shoot from the hip just
Okay.
too much here.
That's
But I
fine.
will say, I think there are things that the city could do to be able to show progress towards using
Okay.
recycled water.
Okay.
And as I indicated before, there isn't a quantity requirement.
Okay.
Right? So just one sort of off-the-cuff idea is that there's potentially maybe close by the plant, places that you could do landscape irrigation.
Okay.
There's a park not too far down 4th Street where, maybe there could be just a small system that's dedicated to recycled water that doesn't require Cherry Valley's whole system to be permitted in order
Right.
to implement. So there may be like short-term wins that you could do that showed that you're complying with the intent and that you're working towards, you could show the regional board that you're working towards putting that water to beneficial use that wouldn't cost an exorbitant amount of money and would maybe then show good faith with the regional board and also buy a little bit of time as the permitting gets completed and the ideas get fully vetted on how to best use the water. I think there might be some short-term wins that can happen there that probably wouldn't be, like I said, exorbitant to implement.
Okay. And again, which goes back to your point about getting together with the folks that are here and making sure that we can develop phased plans if necessary to ensure that we're not wasting that water.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So I'll respond to Mr. Latoul. I know it sounds somber and flat in here, but this is something we've been dealing with for a while, and we still have a lot of serious concerns. And we're not ready to dance in the end zone yet, but we're getting there. So, Mr. Knoll, when you talk about the permitting process taking 18 to 24 months, that's both us developing the water and whoever's going to receive the water, distributed permits on both sides, correct?
I was talking about just the distribution. You're underway, and I believe near the end of this year, the city will have your permit, your master recycling permit to produce recycled water.
Okay, and when we have that permit by the end of the year, we will be ready to distribute recycled water, correct?
You will be ready
I mean,
to
we'll have
produce
the
it.
water to produce.
Yes.
We'll have
Producing
production level.
Yes, you'll be producing recycled water would be eligible to be used as recycled water out in the community.
Okay, because
Yes.
in your presentation, you talk about under the Department of Drinking Water permit to distribute RW, you're unaware that the permitting process has begun. You weren't talking about the city's permitting process, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So even if we're ready by the end of the year, if the recipient of the water, which I guess is Beaumont Cherry Valley Water District, is not already permitted, and that's the 18 to 24 months that you're talking about?
Correct.
So during that time, from the end of the year, when we are producing the level of water, we don't have any place to distribute it, where's it go?
To the creek.
So if it goes down the creek and we continue to send it down creek, people downstream start to rely on that water coming, and is that, we've heard, this is one of the somber comments that we have to look at, is we've heard or learned that we will not capture, will be behind because the water will be relied upon downstream. Can you speak to that?
Only in that there's always a risk if you stay discharging to the creek, that someone downstream will lay claim to it. There's always a risk of that. So the sooner that you can get it diverted and used as recycled water or some other beneficial use to the city, the less likely that you would have somebody laying claim to the beneficial use of that water.
So we're looking at probably if the permitting process, and Mr. Jaggers, you commented that where we are at, and so my question in my mind at that point was, where are you? Where is the water district at that point? And if you don't mind, Mr. Jaggers, you can come up and answer that in a second. but I want to go back to Mr. Knoll. So right now, it looks like if the permitting process has not begun, then 18 to 24 months is how long we'll be putting water down the creek that we can't be using to start working on our TDS requirements, correct?
Unless you have an alternate diversion in place to put it. Yeah.
Okay, and that's a good question, because under the BCVW requirements, distributed recycled water over the ground basin, there you talked about an authorized purveyor, which was the water district. How did they become the authorized purveyor?
That's their purview, is the water distributor and water recycler by LAFCO, and I mean, they're the recognized.
Okay, so, but if they don't get ready in time, or even within the 18 to 24 months, we're still just waiting for their being able to receive the water?
That's not an engineering question,
Okay.
sir.
And I agree with Mr. Martinez that we do need to have a bigger discussion on the fully advanced treated and the recycled water. I think I had one more question for you. Actually, I think that's it. Mr. Jaggers, do you mind coming up, let me ask a couple of questions?
And actually, if I could borrow this book for a moment?
Sure, as long as you promise not to email it to me.
You could sleep on it like a pillow
Yeah,
if you
that's
really want to.
I'll let Elizabeth
One of
summarize
the
it.
things I just want to identify, this is not new news, right? The 1.5 to 2 years. We
Right.
started talking about this in 2018. One of the issues we had with the previous management, I'll just say it as lightly as I can, is we communicated repeatedly, and I communicated a few last week or the week before, the same message, that we have a lot to do, but we have a lot of expenditures to make, and if we're not going to implement it using our non-potable water system, so the discussion a few months ago was going to fully advanced treating, and I said option 3 was that, option 4 was recycled water reuse. We prefer that because that's what the ordinance is and our plan has been all along, and our urban water management considers. That being said, the district is installing, but we have a lot to do, and in our communications with the Division of Drinking Water, they don't have the staff to oversee the conversion and testing.
Who's they?
The Division of Drinking Water
Okay.
has a concern about how do you convert 330 units in 6-month period. You submit plans, you do shutdown testing, you do all those things. Our Director of Operations, Mr. James Bean, is in the audience, and he's had discussions with the Division of Drinking Water, and we hired a consultant. We're ready. I want to say that. We're just really waiting for the city to make a decision on we're going option 3 or option 4. And I spoke to some of those things. It was probably a little unclear because you didn't have this background, which you probably needed a few months ago. But there's some concern on the city management's part and the treatment plant operator. I'm just going to say it all so we're transparent about the risk and the civil and criminal liability of discharge and leakage and things like that. And so that's something the city has to come to terms with. Hopefully it's with us so that we partner and we have confidence in each other. But that was the hesitancy. And a year ago, I shared this information. And 5 years ago, or 4 years, in 17, I put together this schedule. And it ended in 2021. And we could have been done with that 1.5 to 2 years in 2021. But because of, I'll just say, it hasn't been the district not interested in doing it, and we are here, we're interested, we want to find a solution. The past agency's here, Mr. Eckhart, I'll say it, so everybody hears it. Mr. Eckhart reached out and tried to get the city manager, myself, and him in a room to look at grant opportunities to sort of work together to partner regionally. And so you've got really willing partners to solve this and help find the path. And once we find the path, we've got the funds to implement. We just have to have the time. You can't get an electrical service in 2 minutes. You can't get materials acquisition in, so that 18 months to 2 years is probably 2 years. However, to finish off, if you went fully advanced treated, what you don't have necessarily is additional capacity in the Bryan line or the Orange County treatment facilities to do fully advanced treated and send it all down there. So when you start talking 18 to 24 months, either kind of a solution still has a long lead
No,
time.
I understand that,
Yeah,
and we will
yeah.
get into that discussion. I think we'll
Yeah.
follow Mr. Martinez's lead on that.
Yeah.
But in order, so are you surprised that the city of Beaumont would be ready at the end of the year?
No, but
So to speak to full transparency, from my understanding from the previous administration was that you were in a meeting with a number of our staff members, and at that time you indicated that you didn't believe that the city of Beaumont would have water, we'd have our water ready by the end of the year.
that's untrue.
You didn't say that?
No.
Okay.
So, not at all. Mr. Parton had told me you had trouble with your membranes and you were replacing them and that it wouldn't be completed until the fall. And I said, we have a certain amount of time, but that schedule for us has been delivered repeatedly.
Okay.
Over
So it's
the
no
years.
surprise to you that we're ready by the end of the year with
No.
water? Okay.
The surprise to me, when I came down and spoke a couple months ago, was the strong push to fully advanced treat, because there was no partnering.
Right, but we need to get past that because.
No, I understand, but we can't spend money to build facilities that aren't going to be utilized, right? And so from a district perspective, we need to have a plan and we need to work together. And what I communicated repeatedly over multiple months and years to Mr. Parton was we need to get our purchase agreement completed so we can then start to implement. And so that's the only message I conveyed. It had nothing to do with your timing.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Certainly. Were there any other questions? Good. Thank you.
Okay. Everyone good? Sure, go ahead, Mr. Martinez.
So, Mr. No, go back to the 18, 24 months now. Creek being the main option of putting that water. From an engineering point of view, is there anything else that we might be able to do, build storage, do anything between that time that we can utilize that water?
I will bring up something that the regional board, I don't know if they really suggested it, but it just came up in our discussion. Because we had talked to them about potentially building a recycled water storage facility on just south of your treatment plant. Was it 52 acres or something like that? There's some space over there that's really not usable for the treatment plant. And with Todd and Christine and Thaxton previously, we had discussed potentially building recycled water storage facility over there on that property so that you'd have a bigger buffer to be able to store when the water district maybe can't fully utilize all the water, that there's a little buffer storage there. So we had talked to the regional board about that and they were like, yeah, that seems okay. So somebody during our meeting, and I think it was somebody from the regional board, had indicated, well, what if you built a recharge facility there? And instead of storing it, just called it a recharge. So I don't know if that's potentially viable as maybe an interim option where you could start getting some kind of credit for it and being able to use that water for some beneficial use. And so I don't want to say that that's a great idea because it was just sort of bantered around in our meeting with the regional board. But I think that if you get the right people together, you can come together and come up with some creative options.
But from an engineering point of view, that could be a possibility.
I don't know how well it would percolate there or any other
so there's
issues or where there
studies.
might be extraction points, down there. But I do think, like I said, there are opportunities for short-term wins, maybe as it relates to just recycled water, just using it for irrigation, right? There's, you have some frontages that could be done without needing as Mr. Jaggers indicated, right? You need a new pump station there, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to go into it, but there might be ability to do some, smaller scale things that could be implemented while the bigger solution is being implemented.
And what would we need from a city point of view to look into that? Would we need another study, go out and get something from consultants to go out and look at the viability and just percolation, all that stuff? Or
Yeah, for something like that, yeah, you would need a much more in-depth sort of geotechnical groundwater type investigation to identify something like that.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
I did have one other thing, if you would indulge me for just a second. I thought about that, this discussion about fully advanced treated and how you got to that. I don't know all the background and I wasn't here for the presentation, but I do know that one of the concerns that has been had, and one of the reasons why fully advanced treatment has been a consideration, is that the way your permit is written, the city, as the discharger of the water, maintains responsibility and liability for that water from cradle to grave, is the way that the regional board looks at it. And so even if you were to treat it and it meets all the requirements, and you then give it, sell it, however, transfer it to the water district, and they're gonna distribute it, or somebody's gonna recharge it, you maintain responsibility for it. So if it's in a pipeline in the water district and it breaks and it spills into the creek, they're gonna come to the city because it's your recycled water. That's the way that they are looking at the responsibility. The way that what I understand, based on the previous work that was done in the conversations, was if you go to fully advanced treated, you can break that link of custody, right? And so that was part of the driver for looking at that, because, right, if you, let's say you sell the water, give the water, however it gets transferred to Cherry Valley Water District, and they're gonna distribute it, you need to, if you maintain liability for it, you have to maintain some level of oversight or permitting, or it kind of muddies the water of responsibility a little bit.
You know, and that is the primary reason I think that we all decided that
Yeah.
give direction to go to
Yeah.
fully advanced treatment is to reduce our responsibility and our liability.
Right, so I just want to make sure that, point that is a concern that needs to be discussed and worked through. But I think it's part of that bigger discussion as well, because if you're gonna go to fully advanced treated and, right, there's a cost associated with that, and then how does it impact the other aspects of your water supply portfolio here for this, you know, in the city of Beaumont? So I think it needs to be a part of that discussion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Knoll. So let me finish by saying, I agree with you, Dr. Ball. 8 years ago, it was a whole different environment, and none of the agencies would work together. And I think we're in a different place now, and I agree with Mr. Valdivia as well, that we should consider a 2x3 or 2x2x2. But I think it's something that council will have to discuss in an open session and look at that. One of the problems I have is the more government agencies you have involved, the slower things happen. And I feel, and I think this is why we're not as somber as you would hope, I feel under the gun timeline-wise. I mean, we have spent $100 million to upgrade this plant, and it's something that we're accountable to our citizens for what we do with that. So I want to thank everyone for showing up tonight, and we'll get back to you guys about a 2x2x2. One thing though, we've done 2x2s with other agencies, and you need to understand that it is our position when it's a 2x2, even if it's not a majority of council, that it's a Brown Act notified meeting. Some agencies have, I won't name any names, but have indicated they will not participate with us if we go that direction. So with a 2x2x2, you need to make sure that your legal department's okay with it being a public meeting, because that's what it will be. Okay. All right, thank you. So we can move on to the next item. That's the public comment period. This is for items not on the agenda, and I assume we have some comments on this. So let me read a little notice here for those who are going to speak to items that are not on the agenda. This meeting will be open to the public and conducted in a virtual format to be inclusive of all participation preferences. Public comment participation is encouraged by emailing any comments to the city clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. Anyone in person wishing to speak can do so by filling out a form at the back of the room and handing it to a staff member. At this point, do we have any public comments?
Yes, sir. First speaker is John Mclaughlin.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is John Mclaughlin. I'm the president of the San Gorgonio Pass Historical Society. And oddly enough, there's water involved in my presentation. We're here to talk about what the Historical Society refers to as the Eyre House, which is the house right across the street from the City Hall. That is an early historic house of a founder of the city of Beaumont. And we recently heard that the current owner has submitted a request for demolition. And we're concerned about that because of its historical status. Clarendon Bennett Iyer, went by Charles, bought the town of Beaumont, town site, I should say, in 1907 from the Southern California Investment Company. Now, that company had purchased it in 1887, and in 1888, the economy went bad and there was huge inflation and they were having trouble selling property, and also there was a problem with adequate water. And they continued to own the company and begin to mortgage it, and the bank that they mortgaged it with would not allow them to sell it piecemeal. They would only allow them to sell the whole town site. So just before they were ready to be foreclosed on, their savior, Mr. Iyer, in 1907, bought the town site. And a year later, he formed the Beaumont Land and Water Company, and they eventually got some water out of Edgar Canyon up in Cherry Valley, and helped to make people want to open agricultural businesses here. Mostly it was dry farming prior to that. Part of what the history books say is he established a modest California-style bungalow at 6th and Magnolia, which is the house right across the street. He was listed in the 1910 census as a resident of Beaumont, and his wife was instrumental in starting the Beaumont Women's Club and building the Beaumont Library. So he was one of the people that made Beaumont what it was when it became a city in 1912 and backed that move. It's an important factor in the growth of Beaumont, and without his vision and investment in Beaumont, we wouldn't have what we have today. Our history is important to us. And I can't think of anything better, as you look at revamping the downtown area, of having a historic house from a founder of Beaumont right across the street from City Hall, and have it refurbished and made into maybe a business or something that would be beneficial to the area. So rather than an empty vacant lot. So we're looking at a different look at this. The Historical Society is not against historic preservation, but we want it to have a conscience and a concern for the history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mclaughlin. Before the next speaker, I mentioned this, I think, before. We need to add to this paragraph here the part that instructs the public comments to let them know that we're not able to respond to their comments. So I'll put that out there. We are not able to respond to your comments for items that are not on the agenda, but we could take it up at a future meeting. And if there's something that the staff can get back to you on, we'll direct that. But I just want to let you know that we're not ignoring what you're saying, but we just are unable to comment or discuss it since it's not on the agenda. So could we have the next speaker, please?
Laura Mclaughlin.
Hey, you're a captive audience, so I just wanted to remind you, I'm Lori Mclaughlin, I'm with the Historical Society as well, and I wanted to remind you that we're going to have our very popular traveling history exhibit at the Cherry Festival, and of course we'll have a float in the parade and maybe win sweepstakes again, so we'll see you there. A bunch of us are here tonight, and a lot of us are watching online right now, so we're pretty well represented, and my hope is that we can save the historic Iyer House. First, I want to say there's a real interest in local history within this community. One of the reasons I know this is true is the incredible involvement and membership within the Historical Society. Over the last 5 years, our attendance has been impressive. Recently, we had 68 people at our April meeting, and in March, we had 60 people. And over the last year, we have averaged 4 new dues-paying members per month, and that's even with a pandemic, so that's impressive. I'm a 4th-generation Beaumontian. I call us Beaumonsters, so we're all Beaumonsters, right? And I love Beaumont. I really want this town to be something to show off, and the bones still exist for a vibrant historical showcase. However, I was away for about 30 years. After I graduated from Beaumont High School, I went and saw the world, and I came back about 7 years ago, and man, the 80s, the 90s, and the aughts, they really did a number on this town. It looks terrible. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but you know what I'm saying. And it's clearly that been that no one's been paying attention to the historical awareness or preservation. Sadly, the majority of today's residents only know the city in its current state. And Exhibit A is, for years, the house has been deteriorating with very obvious lack of care by successive owners. Driving around town, I see clearly there is no incentive for owners to maintain their properties, residential or commercial, or it seems that way. I realize there's probably some rules. I know a lot of properties owned by out-of-town landlords who have zero interest in the city's health and vibrancy, and I need to learn more about why this is and what the city's role is and how the community can encourage others to respect what we have here. Within the city's new downtown revitalization plans, I hope we may be able to somehow save the Iyer House and find an appropriate use for it. And finally, I encourage the city of Beaumont to establish a historical commission. Not a crazy nothing can be torn down historical commission, but a thoughtful historical commission that truly understands the value and economic value, specifically, in preservation and alternative use of historical buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Nancy Hall.
This reminds me of a shower cap on a microphone. Sorry. Good evening. I wanted to first tell you guys, and I hope you don't start that yet.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, I wanted to tell you guys that I do like what you did to the room in here, how nice it looks. And welcome Elizabeth back to office. I know you never would retire. Anyway, so tonight I came to address some concerns that I have. The first thing is, I saw the EIR report on which you can't, comment on. And I know you can't comment on anything, but for the Sunny Cow project. And I'm seeing the warehouse and banning and lots of things happening here. So I would like to request that council put a maximum warehouse square foot in the general plan as an amendment and the municipal code to maybe affect something like a maximum of 640 square feet. I believe that's the Amazon building, but that we already have, to minimize the amount of warehouses and how big they are in our community, and to limit them, and we have to have it written and not be amended, that they have to be in the Beaumont Industrial Park off 4th Street, not anywhere else in town and where our houses are at, that they have to be in the Beaumont Industrial Park. I would also like to suggest that it be required of the applicants who have to have, that are industrial or commercial, that have to have an EIR report, that they include mandatory traffic cumulative impact reports, not just from our projects in here in town, but from our neighboring communities. As you will notice when you go towards Hemet, San Jacinto is already at the Ramona Expressway with homes. And they're coming up Highway 79 and coming into the problem there at Beaumont Avenue to get on the freeway. The World Trade, whatever, in Moreno Valley. I know we have the Moreno Valley Freeway, and I also know as of today, I spoke to WRCOG to find out about the monies and what you had for the Patero on and off ramps, which we don't have there. And so you have all that industry coming into the 4th Street, and we don't have a way to move that traffic. We're still stuck. I'd like to suggest that EIR report, when I say, these other cities, also like Calamasa, Singleton Road is, they're planning on the Roberts Road and Singleton Road, a major housing development, commercial development there. And that's going to affect Cherry Valley. I talked to Caltrans last week. They don't have any plans for doing anything with Cherry Valley Boulevard in the next 5 to 7 years. That's going to, I guess, all come out of RCTC and whatever WRCOG does. But in any case, those projects take time. So when those other projects start, what are we going to do with the traffic, and where's our emergency services? We have no frontage roads. We don't have a way to get around all this unless you're a helicopter and you beep over. Another thing, and I suggested this to Mayor White, who might recall, that in 2004, I suggested a Hillside Ordinance. And I was on that committee. It was approved and rescinded based on a lie that was told by the city planner. It will require an EIR. It will have impact. But the type of soil we have in Beaumont and the hillsides is a type of soil that offers to slide in heavy rain. And in Anaheim Hills in the late 90s, there were a lot of homes that came tumbling down off the hills because of that soil. And we know the Legacy Highlands, they were gonna, on their EIR, they were gonna have to truck in dirt because we just don't have the right kind of dirt. And the police department sunk about 1 inch and they moved up here. But we have these issues in Beaumont and they need to be addressed. And if we don't make it a ruling in the EIR, you know, in the application or in the code, then it seems like somebody always comes up and says, well, I want to amend that. You know, we need to make it so they're not going to amend it. They're not going to change our viewscapes and such. Okay, and then
Ms. Hall, you need to sort of wrap it up.
I'm wrapping it.
Okay.
I'm wrapping it. Okay. And so when I didn't bring this up during water because I didn't think it was quite appropriate then. But here's the thing, it's an issue for me, is that since Amazon has been there, the landscaping has these little recycled water signs in the landscaping, and it's not recycled water. And I called Mr. Jagger last week about it, and he said, well, there's a state law that says that the landscapers have to put that in the area. Well, it's a lie. I mean, and so why mislead the public to think that that's what that is? And so I think those signs need to come out, and you can put them back in after you're permitted, you know. And lastly, while this is not a question that you can answer, but I just want to put it out there, I would like to know the answer to it, is when I talked to WRCOG today, and they showed me where to go in and look up what monies they have allocated the city of Beaumont for Potrero. I saw a really big number in there, and I would like to know what the status of that project is, when you're going to go to bid, or if you have already, to put those on and off ramps, because that traffic, like when Chiefwood and I talked about closing off Vale, he wanted to close off Vale because it was so dangerous, and we have truck traffic going through the barrio, and First in California is often backed up all the way to the 79, people trying to circumvent Beaumont Avenue. We need to figure out how to get the traffic problem fixed. And so I would personally kind of like to know that. I've made a lot of calls in this last week trying to figure things out on my own because Beaumont staff is so busy, they can't get back to me.
So, Mrs. Hall, I need you to wrap it up.
I'm wrapped.
Okay, good.
And
So let me-
I made copies of so you guys don't have to take notes. Nicole
Okay.
has it to pass it to you.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
In our budget workshop, which was last Wednesday,
Okay.
Our city engineer, Mr. Hart, gave a pretty detailed timeline on Potrero and where we are, what parts of the Potrero interchange.
Is that online?
It is. So if you go back, it's about a 3-hour meeting. I would start around an hour and a half, probably. But you'll see that because we asked him a bunch of questions on that. When are we going to go to bid? When is construction going to start? Are we doing phase 2, phase 3? So if you go back to that meeting, I think you'll get a lot of your answers there.
Okay.
How much money did WRCOG say they have on that?
$28 million.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Nancy, it's on YouTube, by the way.
Huh?
If you go to YouTube, it's on YouTube.
The meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Is that on the website to tell me we're on YouTube? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Any more comments?
One more speaker, Gerald Kay.
Hello, council members. My name is Gerald Kay, and I'm speaking on behalf of the San Gregorio Pass Historical Society. And I go back, I want to talk about another historical building, which is the one we're in. And I have memories going back 70 years. And before it came Beaumont Civic Center, it was Beaumont High School, of which I'm a graduate. And they've made a lot of improvements here. I'm glad that it's continuing rather than having been torn down like the proposal of the house across the street. And even after it's been a Beaumont Civic Center, it's functioned very well with the auditorium and the stage in there. And I've been back to many, many class reunions, so the city accommodates the high school, past high school students. So anyway, I'm just using this as remarks for the continuing preservation of historical places. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kay.
I'll check and see if we have any callers on
Okay.
the line. Jennifer, do we have any calls on the line?
No callers.
No other speakers.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion here or at the end of action items. Approval of all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. Are there any items to be pulled for discussion? If not, can someone make a motion, please?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve consent items 1 through 10.
I'll second.
And I assume we do not have any comments on these, right?
Oh, sorry, Mayor.
I have none. Can I make a correction? That would be 2 through 10. 1 was the presentation.
I was just testing to see if you're paying attention. You were right. Thank you.
Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, was there a second on there?
What's that?
I think
Thank you.
Mr. Santos seconded.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item number 11, we're into the public hearings. There are no public hearings, so we'll move to action items. Item 11, authorize an employment contract for Community Services Director. And we have a staff report from Elizabeth Gibbs.
Yes, thank you. Carrie is on vacation. So before you tonight is an employment contract for Community Services Director, Doug Story. Doug Story has been serving in an out-of-class interim assignment as the Community Services Director since January 7th of this year. Prior to serving as interim, he was the city's Assistant Director of Community Services, and he was originally hired in January of 2020, right before COVID hit. He holds a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from CBU, go Lancers, and a master's degree in religious studies with an emphasis in strategic management and team leadership from Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. He has almost 10 years of experience working in government agencies, specifically community services. I negotiated the terms of the employment contract, which you have before you, and the city attorney has reviewed and approved the language within the contract. I want to point out that there is a hard copy. There were some changes made to the termination clause and vehicle allowance, and those changes reflect, I'll take them one at a time. The vehicle allowance, right now, Mr. Story drives a city truck, a 4x4. It is appropriate for his position. He does do some off-roading with his weed abatements and things like that, project management. If for some reason that truck needs to be passed down to future employees, he would like the option of taking the vehicle allowance that is afforded to all of the department heads, and that's $350 a month. So we wrote the language as an either or. He would not get both. As long as he drives a city vehicle, he would not get the stipend, but he does want that option. We are short of trucks, and it very well may be that in the future he has to turn that vehicle over in the interest of operations. The second clause is the termination agreement. Mr. Story, the language in the agreement allows Mr. Story to resign and not give a 30-day notice, and that is because that is a violation of the law, as I understand it, Mr. Pinckney.
Well, it's better written the way it is now. That's what I would say.
But the way it's written now
Without the
is
30-day notice
it's
provision.
the hard copy we have here, right?
Correct, the red line. So the contract provides for an annual fully loaded fiscal impact of $190,832. I do want to remind everybody that that is a fully loaded rate. That includes all benefits afforded to Mr. Story. The final quarter cost for the current fiscal year is $47,708 to be paid out of the general fund. And so the recommended action is to approve the employment agreement with Doug Story as Community Services Director and authorize me as the interim city manager to sign the agreement. And on a personal note, I have to tell you, in 32 years, Doug Story is one of the best hires that I made during my career. He has proven himself time and time again to be a dedicated, loyal, knowledgeable, hardworking individual, and his Parks and Rec background and his CDBG background are invaluable to this city. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions, comments? Go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Story on a couple of projects. One is the Memorial Committee, and found him to be very knowledgeable, very personable. And the comment that was made at the Boys and Girls Club about Mr. Story and the extra mile that he went to ensure that not only just doing the job that he was called out there to do, but to check, to make sure the people that were using the building, the facility, were okay as well, or didn't have any needs. To me, speaks volume of an employee and their dedication to and service to the community. So, Mr. Story, I appreciate what you do for us. You dress up nice, you clean up nicely. That's all I have, Mayor.
Says the guy with no tie, but anyways. We'll move on.
Thanks for pointing that out, sir.
You're absolutely good. So do I have a motion on the item?
I'll make a motion to approve the employment agreement with Mr. Doug Story as Community Service Director and authorize the interim city manager to sign the agreement.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Doug.
Welcome.
All right, item number 12, approval of the fiscal year 22-23 Local Responsibility Area Wildland Protection Reimbursement Agreement. Staff report, Chief Delays. Oh,
Chief Hopkins.
you're a little shorter than
Oh, the big guns.
It's been a long day. Long day. Okay. It says, yeah, I'm not going to go there. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. The city currently contracts with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection for 1,173 acres that is south of the Four Seasons project. It's a wildland area that's in the incorporated cities. The fire protection districts and special districts with fire suppression responsibilities are referred to as local responsibility areas. All fire suppression activities and responsibilities within LRA wildland areas are the responsibility of the local agency. The current contract with CAL FIRE expires on June 30th, 2022. Wildfires within the areas incorporated within the city are frequent. Wildland fires are considered one of the highest natural disaster risks that the city faces. The city is in an extremely wind-prone area, and it is not uncommon for fires to grow beyond the local capability of the resources assigned to protect the city. When a wildland fire grows beyond the ability and capability of local resources, assistance is requested from CAL FIRE to provide wildland engine companies, inmate hand crews, bulldozers, and aircraft. Without an agreement of protection of wildlands within an LRA between the city and the state of California, these resources are then considered assistance by hire, and the city is liable for the cost from the time of dispatch. Within the city, there are 1,173 acres designated as wildlands subject to the LRA designation, In an effort to reduce the city's liability for the cost of a wildland suppression in the LRA, the city can enter into a local responsible area wildland fire protection agreement with CAL FIRE for protection within the wildlands within the city. This agreement will provide state resources to control wildland fire at no additional cost to the city. CAL FIRE will provide fire protection to the LRA as if they were still the sole agency with fire suppression responsibility. This agreement will provide unlimited use of state engine companies and hand crews, bulldozers, and aircraft to supplement the daily level of fire protection provided to the city by the county of Riverside. Currently, the cost to enter into an agreement with CAL FIRE is $34.52 per acre. That includes a 12.01% administrative charge. The total annual cost for the 1,173 acres to be protected by this agreement is $40,493.70.
Okay. Questions? Any comments from the public?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
No callers.
Okay. Mr. Martinez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Absolutely an essential protection, so definitely support it. My only question is fiscally, how does it compare to what we paid prior? Did it go up slightly? Did
It actually, I believe, went down this year. I think it was 44,000 last year,
Okay,
if I remember right.
Very well, that's all I need. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other comments, I'll make a motion to approve the recommended action as written here.
I'll second.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 13.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Agreement with Crosstown Electrical and Data Incorporated for maintenance services for annual citywide traffic signal maintenance in amount not to exceed $17,700 per year for 3 years for a total not to exceed maintenance amount of $53,100. Staff report from Mr. Hart.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Mr. Hart, we don't have good sound from you.
Give me just a second. Jeff, let me test something.
We weren't hearing the other.
It may not be just Mr. Hart, because
Yeah,
when
we weren't
Jennifer
hearing the
chimed in,
pub-
we couldn't hear her either.
Yeah, I've been trying to fix it this whole time. Jeff, can you give me a test really quick?
Test,
One more time?
test.
Is that better?
That's better.
Yeah, let's give it a try.
Okay.
There we go.
So the item before you is regarding maintenance and repair of the city's traffic signals. Staff issued a notice inviting bids for citywide traffic signal maintenance in accordance with Beaumont Municipal Code back in February. The bid included a scope of work and bid documents for public advertisement in which 4 bids were received. The lowest bidder was determined based on the base of the annual bid amount, and staff reviewed the bids and determined that Crosstown Electrical and Data was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. We received no bid challenges. Therefore, staff is recommending Crosstown Electrical and Data to perform citywide traffic signal maintenance. The scope of work includes some of the following: regular scheduled monthly maintenance of traffic control devices, repair of traffic signal controllers and signs, replacement of traffic signals and illuminated signs, testing and repair of power supplies and battery backups, and the ability to respond to emergency maintenance needs. With that said, it's staff is recommending a public works agreement to Crosstown Electrical and Data for maintenance services, annual citywide traffic signal maintenance in an amount not to exceed $17,700 per year for 3 years with a total not to exceed amount of $53,100. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any public comments on this one?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Mr. Lara.
Yeah, Mr. Hart, in the general requirements in the RFP, I didn't see anything referencing synchronization of the signal lights. Can you speak to that for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important to make a distinction between
the coordination, signal timing for individual signals, and synchronization, which is generally referring to a series of signals in which we are coordinating the timing to maximize traffic flow. So certainly as part of the responsibilities, they will be responsible for ensuring that all projects are operating and timed in accordance with the approved timing sheets within the signal cabinets. Sometimes they jump signals. Sometimes the time controllers can get off. And so they can default to timing rather than vehicle detection. Those things they will be responsible for. But signal synchronization, and we do not currently have any projects planned for additional synchronization at this time. We recently installed or instilled some synchronization along Highland Springs in a cooperative agreement with Banning and Caltrans. But any new projects would have to be rooted in a technical study from a traffic engineer and then ultimately bid to do that work. And so while they may, should that happen in the future, while we may like to engage them to implement that, if we go down that road, it's not a part of their maintenance per se. They would be responsible for maintaining the existing synchronization that we have in Highland Springs, but not the implementation of any new synchronization.
So when we've got an issue, let's just say I get a phone call regarding the amount of time that left-hand turn on Highland Springs going south or north, excuse me. No, it's south. It's taking too long. That's timing. That's not synchronization, right?
Right. That is the signal timing. And sometimes that can happen too. Like I say, sometimes they can jump back into default, which is timing versus vehicle detection. And so they would be responsible for ensuring that it's operating properly, and if something has jumped, to reset it back to where it's supposed to be.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Finn.
I have a kind of a similar question is, has the signal timing been altered during the road improvements? I've noticed some issues at Oak Valley Parkway and Oakview Drive in particular, where it does take longer now and impatient drivers are running the lights.
Yeah, so at Oak Valley and Oakview, that's a fair point. That was related to the development project there on the corner. And so as part of their street improvements, they had to grind the street, and anytime that happens, the loops are disturbed in that process. So there was a time where that is a classic case where the signal resulted back to timing, and there was either non-detection or it was an extended wait time for when effectively no one was there. It's back on loop now. Are there any current issues within the past week or so? I'm unaware of those, but that is one of the instances that was related to development construction.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So my question had to do with synchronization too, so that was answered. Thank you for that. My only other one has to do with the replacement. So does that bid include replacement of the actual sign? So they'll go up and put it in, but will they actually pay for that as well?
We would pay for the materials, but they would be for the overhead or the labor associated with it.
Okay, that was my question. Okay, because I know the wind likes to throw things around and take a lot of those illuminated signs. Okay, I thought it was a good deal for that, but okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hart, are you still in the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We'll probably be done in just a few more items. Probably won't go too long, especially since Mr. Santos isn't speaking much tonight.
No.
But I would like to talk to you before closed session. I have a question I have for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I headed back to get a few items, and item got called. I'll make my way back up right now.
Okay, great.
Mayor.
Thank you.
Since you mentioned my name in here, I'm sleeping now. Just now, just listening. Jeff, on this, presentations you have in here is more on the repair and maintenance. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all repair and maintenance. Yes, sir.
Okay. But on the traffic timings and everything, do we have a outside service or a contract who's doing all this timing on the left and right, and especially I'll go forward or direct on this is the Oak Valley Parkway and the 10 freeway. And I think I mentioned this a month ago, the truckers, and it adds up the traffic over there, especially when we have 2:30 in the afternoon and also 5:30 in the afternoon. Why is that heavy traffic over there? Because of the the kids is coming out on the elementary school, and also the 3 o'clock or the 2 o'clock on timing also on the Amazon and also some of the warehouses in there using the Oak Valley Parkway or the San Mateo Canyon. And that's the critical hours in there. But the thing is, my point is going eastbound, or to be exact on the direction is the northeast, going northeast, that going to the LA and going to Palm Spring. And I think we have to make a studies on that. How come going towards school? That's another difference on that. Around 6:30 up to 8 o'clock in the morning, there's a heavy traffic in there. And if we could correct that, Mayor, I think we have to have a agenda on that side. And everybody's complaining about that signals in there. If you could check that, I think it's the Caltrans responsibility. Do we have any responsibility on the timing of signals in there? Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, and we certainly have responsibility, right? We're concerned and interested about the residents. So we can work with Caltrans. Technically does oversee and implement the timing of those intersections, but they were developed as part of the project that we implemented and in concert with Caltrans. So, primarily we'll look to ensure that they're operating in accordance with how they were intended to, and if they are, then maybe they need to be reanalyzed and adjusted according to current vehicle traffic patterns. And so that we would utilize our traffic engineer to kind of look at that and say, are there modifications to the time that we can make to help these things move more freely, particularly during evening commute and morning commute times.
You're right. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Santos knows that. Okay, at this point,
I need a motion on
I'll make a motion to award Public Works agreement to the Crosstown Electrical and Data, Inc. for maintenance services for annual citywide traffic signal maintenance in an amount not to exceed $17,700 per year for 3 years, for a total not to exceed maintenance amount of $53,100.
I'll second.
A roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Item 14, consideration of a letter of opposition to Assembly Bill 2011. Staff report, Christina Taylor.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Before you for your consideration this evening is a letter of opposition to Assembly Bill 2011. Assemblymember Wicks has proposed this bill known as the Affordable Housing and High Roads Job Act of 2022. The primary concerns surrounding this bill pertain to land use compatibility issues, lack of CEQA analysis, which in some cases we would consider good, but not in this particular case. And then the loss of local controls through state-imposed mandates. This bill is opposed by the League of California Cities and the State Building and Construction Trade Council, among other agencies. And there are a number of concerns, like I stated in the staff report. There are additional ones in the letter, which have been included in your staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions about it if we have any particular concerns. But staff is recommending approving the letter of opposition.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments on this one?
I have no written comments. Jennifer, do we have anyone on the line?
No callers.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I'll move that that City Council consider, let me rephrase that. I move that the City Council authorizes the mayor to sign the letter of opposition.
I'll second that.
A roll call, please.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Councilmember Santos?
Aye.
Councilmember Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez?
Yes.
Mayor White?
Yes. Next item is legislative updates and discussion.
I will spare you from having to listen to my horrible sounding voice any further. All of the legislative business for this evening was handled in the last item.
Okay, thank you. Economic development update, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Economic Development Committee update is simply that we're looking forward to the meeting, which is next week on May 11th, and that starts at 4 p.m. It's a pretty full schedule, so we're going to be discussing the downtown business district and parking. We're going to be going over the economic development website design proposals and receiving a apprenticeship/workforce development update from Beaumont Unified School District, as well as Mount San Jacinto Community College. And that concludes my report for tonight. Look forward to the meeting next week. Thank you.
Thank you. City Treasurer report. Mr. Genetti, are you there? All right, we'll move on to the city clerk report. We can come back if Mr. Genetti.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Very good meeting tonight, no report.
Okay, thank you. One more time, Mr. Genetti, are you there? You might be on mute if you are. Okay, we'll move on to the city attorney report. Mr. Pinckney.
Yes, just briefly, if you look at item 15 in your packet, you'll see that we're really down. The list of pending litigation against the city is pretty minimal at this point. We eliminated 2 cases from that list. We resolved those 2 cases. We still list the Charles Peters case, but I wanted to report to you that he had sought reconsideration by the Court of Appeal. The city had prevailed at the trial court level, at the appellate level. He sought reconsideration, and that was denied by the appellate court. So at this point, we're hopeful that that's the end of it, but I didn't want to remove it just because you never know, if they're going to seek review by the Supreme Court. Hopefully not, because the city has prevailed at every step of the way. The other items, 2 and 3, are really an action, one brought in federal court and one in state court by the same individual, and they're both at the pleading stage level at this point. So we're down to really, if Peters is in fact resolved, we're really down to a dispute with one individual at this point, which is, we're really pleased with that.
Thank you. Interim city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I'd like to do is invite your new building official up front, Sarah Retmer. Sarah comes to us from the city of Hemet. She was there for 25 years. She did hold she was the building official for the city of Hemet. She is also, has worked with Calbo on developing their training materials. And she was one of 10 applications and made it to the final round of 3 applicants and was heavily interviewed, I understand, by multiple people. And they all agreed that Sarah was the best fit for the city. So welcome aboard, Sarah. She started the same day I came back. So it was a little, I think, weird for her to hear me say welcome aboard. I don't know if you want to say a few words or.
Become your chief building official, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And then in your packet, there is an update on the Weaver Mortuary project that Mr. Roger Berg came to speak to council at the last meeting. I won't go into detail. There is a full chronology. However, I do want to note that I did speak with Mr. Berg today. We had a long talk. He did relay that he is satisfied with the progress the city's making and the direction that we're going with Weaver Mortuary. And so he's pleased. A couple other items to note. The May 17th City Council agenda, as a reminder, I will be on Zoom for that meeting. At that meeting, we will present budget amendments for this current fiscal year. We will have a 4th of July update, and we will also have a sports park update, among other things. On May 23rd, we plan to kick off the sports park reseed project, and so the park will be closed. The walking path will be open, but the fields will be closed, and we are working with the youth sports leagues and other leagues to put them at other parks and get that all organized. Mr. Story has done a good job with working with them and getting them some playing fields outside of the sports park. On June 7th, as a reminder, we will be bringing the fire station contract award to that meeting. We will also have a comprehensive park update to include the sports park and Rangel Park, so that you know progress for parks, as well as a transportation update. Mr. Hart will be presenting just a summary of where we're at with various transportation updates on the June 7th meeting. And with that, that is all I have.
How long will the park be closed for seating?
3 months? Oh, till August, I'm sorry. So that, about 3 months, yeah. 4 months.
Okay,
It will be open in time for the AYSO season.
okay. All right, do we have any future agenda items for,
Mayor, could I interject? I'm sorry. I do have a public comment that I missed at the beginning of the meeting, a written comment.
okay,
You can let me know when you'd like to hear it.
now's good.
Okay. This comment is from Monica Forbes. I would like to submit a public comment for City Council meeting. This comment is regarding the Shadow Creek Park located at 13155 Connor Court in Beaumont. The playground and basketball court at this site has deteriorated over the years. The foam tiles are broken and the play structure has sharp metal edges, posing a safety issue to many children who visit the park on a daily basis. The basketball court surface is slippery and needs to be redone. A work order has been requested, but these items have not been repaired. I'm aware that the capital improvement plan did not include the renovation of Shadow Creek Park. I would like to know when the city plans to improve this site. Respectfully, Monica Forbes.
Okay, thank you. And future agenda items, Mr. Finn, you were reaching?
Yes, thank you. Could we have staff provide a report on the demolition process when someone, requests that? And in particular with the Iyer House, I'd like to know officially what is the addition with that block construction that was added to it, and what if staff knows what the proposed usage of that site would be. And then just explain the process of, is it the planning commission that approves that demolition? And then if someone doesn't like the results of that, then is that brought to the city council? So just to understand that process too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have one, Mayor.
We can get that on the next agenda, right? The
Yes.
17th? Okay.
If possible, I attended a DRT meeting, DRC meeting. One of the items that had come up was a concern with car stacking through drive-throughs and things like that. And so there is a study that we can do to adopt a policy to make sure that anytime that we have a drive-through like that, we can make sure that ample car stacking is provided so that you don't have cars backing up onto the roadways and creating problems. So I'd like to bring that back as an agenda item, please.
And DRC is?
Development Review Committee.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry about that.
no problem.
Yes.
Okay. See no other future agenda items.
Mayor, my apologies. I would like to add that we will bring the 2x2x2 report back to council at the
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay. One thought I had on that is it may make more sense to do 2x2 with one agency and 2x2 with the other. I don't know, but just maybe look at that.
We can do that.
Okay. So now we go to council reports. We'll go in reverse order tonight. I'll go first, and I have nothing to report. Mr. Martinez, you're up.
So I attended the Rotary Club's Taste of the Past, along with many of us there, so it was an awesome event. Just wanted to give kudos to Rotary Club on that. I attended the Cal Cities Environment Quality Committee meeting as one of the division reps. And we had a very robust discussion on a act that might be coming to voters called the California Recycling Plastic Pollution Reduction Act. And in this act, it requires CalCycle to develop regulations that would require the single-use plastic packaging to be recyclable, reusable, refillable, et cetera. And so we had a discussion on this, and overall, the idea of the plastic usage has a lot of elements that have come forward, particularly the waste that it causes, and now studies showing that plastics are showing up in the blood of youth because of consumption. So the committee really had a view of, we need to do something about the plastic regulation. So this bill had some requirements in there that made sense. The problem is, it also, in my opinion, it had a component of taxation on it. So within the bill, it wants to add a up to 1 cent tax on single-use plastic containers. So the committee ended up voting on it, and we came out to a 22 yes, 17 no, 3 abstentions. And the committee voted to recommend to Cal Cities that Cal Cities takes a supportive position. I voted against it because I didn't support the taxation part. And basically, anytime I see something that comes up that's environmentally focused, you know, I'm very concerned because I support that. And I support the idea of the single use. But what I don't like is when the taxation comes up without a plan. I don't like throwing money at something without having a plan, without the regulations in place. And I have a concern because we're already being taxed. Well, we have fees on the plastic bags and so forth. So I'd like to see more of what the money's going for, accountability of what's out there already. And so I had an issue with that. So I did vote against that as your rep. But to let you know that we were outvoted, so they will send forth a support to Cal Cities, who can still, vote to not support, to oppose support, or take no action, or wait, and so forth. We also supported the Forest Biomass Waste Utilization Program. That one was pretty much unanimously supported to clean up forests with the dead decaying material that can add to the fueling of the fires, forest fires. This bill would help to eliminate that by pulling some of that up and burning that through controlled burns, not controlled burns, but through burning of where the scrubbers are kind of controlling some of the carbon that goes into the air. So it's a way of us getting rid of that without keeping it for fuel for future fires. And I'm sure Chief Hopkins probably said better than I did. We had a state drought update. Again, we've been talking about drought, very grim looks, reservoirs low, snowpacks low, poor infrastructure in the state. There are some places that do have abundant water here, but they can't use that in other places. We don't have the infrastructure to take it from one part to another. And I did learn that the single largest use of energy in California is the conveyance of water. I didn't know that. That was an interesting fact. Attended the RCA. We voted to support the new management approach to the wild pig mitigation. Wild pigs are destroying many areas, and and I laugh because I shouldn't, but it's an important issue to increase the pig tag count and let the land management discuss what number that could be. But we had a limit on that, and they voted to support the efforts to change that. We also updated our fee credit policy, requiring member agencies to acknowledge what incentives they're offering to property owners to achieve their MSHCP conservation mitigation fees. And lastly, our species of the month was the Kino checker spot butterfly. And that's what you have from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Finn.
Nothing new. I just want to say thanks again to staff for the budget workshop that was put together. It was well presented, transparent, and easily understood, so thanks again.
Mr. Santos.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Mr. Lara.
Nothing new to report, sir.
Oh, wow, okay.
Made up for it.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to adjourn to closed session, starting at 8:04.
So the closed session item is public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, title City Manager. And then we are also going to have the special meeting item in closed session as well. And that item is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.92 and/or 3, one potential case related to threat of litigation by Noble Creek Meadows LLC regarding Noble Creek Vista specific plan.
Okay, thank you. And we'll start the closed session in about 10 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, you're quite welcome.
Sorry, we gotta get audio first.
Okay, we're back from closed session, and Mr. Pinckney, can you give a report out of our closed session?
Yes, council met on item number 1 on the regular meeting agenda, public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, title City Manager. There was no reportable action. We did not meet on the special meeting closed session item. We're going to begin that meeting, and we're going to do that separately, and then we'll report out.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and adjourn the closed session at 8:46. And we will now go into our special session meeting at 8:46. And do we have any public comments on the special?
I have no written comments, and Jennifer said there's no calls on the line.
Okay. No, I don't think we need, do we need a roll call for the special set? You might as well do it. You have
Just
nothing
do
better
it.
to do, right?
Councilmember Lara,
Still here.
Councilmember Santos,
Here.
Councilmember Fenn,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Martinez.
Here.
Mayor White.
Here. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and the closed session item is number 1, is listed in the agenda.